Whoa. Whoa, I blanked out for a sec there. Where am I? Oh, right. Hello, once again, one and all, to the late night chat room. I'm your host, the Moonstar. Last we met, I discussed the game from the RPG genre of the video game world. But for tonight, I figured it'd be nice to talk about the game genre near and dear to my own heart. Dating sim, I mean fighting games. For this evening, I'll be rambling about why I love fighting games, and you can't stop me. And I'm pretty sure most of you know what a fighting game is, at least I hope so. If not, this episode will be completely incomprehensible. The kinds of fighting games I'll be discussing tonight are traditional 2D fighters, none of this Super Smash Bros. Stuff or things like For Honor, though each of those are good in their own right. We're going to be sticking to things like Street Fighter here. I just want to see two dudes or ladies thrown down on two axes, thank you very much. Now, I can't exactly pin down what my first experience with a fighting game was. We have things from the PS2 like Capcom Fighting Evolution, Def Jam Vendetta, and even the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. And yes, this exists and it's kind of a banger, not gonna lie. Those are some of the first fighting games I can remember playing, but I've been playing these games for a long time and on a lot of different consoles. So trying to determine the first one I played would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack that's inside a bag that's been thrown into the ocean after being set on fire. And just so y'all understand, I was never really great at these games, but the joy I found in going toe-to-toe against someone else in a way that didn't get anyone physically hurt, at least most of the time, was great. As for the games that really got me hooked on the genre, well, I've had time to think on it, and I believe that there are three that have solidified my love for fighting games. So I've gone ahead and split them into three different sections of this episode for you to enjoy. Let's begin with my childhood and what is quite possibly still my favorite fighting game ever made.
Ready?
Yeah, this probably isn't really a big surprise to those who are in the fighting games. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 holds a special place in the fighting game community itself, being a culmination of everything the Versus series of games had been up to that point. Oh, and if you don't get what I mean by the Versus series, here's a quick definition. Any game that is a crossover between, usually, Capcom and another company's characters being pit against each other, typically in a 3v3 tag team format. X-Men vs. Street Fighter was the first of its kind. Before that, however, we had X-Men Children of the Atom and Marvel Superheroes, which then led into what we know as the Marvel vs. Capcom series today. And MVC2 is definitely the most well-known of the series, and for a lot of reasons, which we'll get to. For me, my first exposure to this game was, I believe, on the PlayStation 3. You know, when it was still available in digital stores. This game really needs to come back. Anyways, back in the glory days of childhood, I remember all the times I'd be playing and just getting absolutely destroyed because of older sibling privilege. But win or lose, it didn't matter, because this game was, and still is, just so much fun to play. All you had to do was pick a team of three and just go absolutely nuts on the controller. And I'll admit it, I'm a button masher, and as a dumb little idiot boy, I had no concept of what combos were. My controller just did cool stuff and I thought that's all there was to it. That is, until I saw the Iron Man Infinite and realized just how nutty this game truly was. The gameplay of Marvel 2 is what got me hooked onto this genre as a kid. I couldn't get enough of it. Being able to choose from so many characters that can do so many things was like being in an all-you-can-eat buffet. A very unhealthy amount of choices you can make. Landing a crossover combos with an absolute rush of serotonin, air comboing and switching characters mid-attack can make anyone feel like a god. But it wasn't just the gameplay that made me love this game so much. We have things like the previously mentioned gigantic character list, just jam-packed with characters both familiar and unfamiliar to me. I didn't know a majority of the Marvel cast and a few from the Capcom side, but that didn't stop me from enjoying each one of them. Strider flies around the screen like an addict having severe withdrawals and it looks friggin' sick. The general presentation of Marvel 2 is just a treat for the eyes. The art style is absolutely gorgeous, with the hand-drawn aesthetic bringing this sort of nostalgic aura to every character. Or maybe that's just the actual nostalgia I have for this game. Regardless, the visual designs of each character are perfectly crafted. I could stare at this stuff for hours. For reference, of course. The animations and sprite work, though some reused from older games, still look incredible in action. Except maybe for Morrigan, her sprite just looks odd next to everyone else. Besides all that, would you look at the time? It's time once more for me to nerd out about video game music. Cause I mean, have you heard this game's soundtrack? Yeah, I could listen to this soundtrack for a long while. The music is a big part of what keeps me playing this game for so long whenever I do hop on for a quick arcade run, which eventually ends up with me just blasting some poor CPUs who weren't expecting me to come around town. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 truly is a masterpiece, and it deserves all the love in the world. And the remaster, because that would be cool. But remastered or not, this will always be my #1 fighting game of all time. So if Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is what truly started my journey into fighting games, what kept me going? Well, there were a ton of fighting games that had come out during those times. Mortal Kombat 9 and 10 were a blast to experience, Injustice was a good time for a bit, I learned what a Tekken was, and we saw the release of Dragon Ball FighterZ, a free v free game based on one of my favorite anime series ever. It was also around this time that I had gone into things like Skullgirls, which is another free v free game. Interesting. But even with all these new modern games coming out left and right, just last year I finally got my hands on a classic, and one that reinvigorated my love for fighting games and the rush of battle.
Let's get ready to battle! Feel the intensity when power and technique collide! Crush the competition! A battle beyond your imagination! Let the martial arts madness begin! 2001 is the year we make contact! Welcome to the revolution!
Yep, another Versus Series game that has a free v free format. It's almost like the whole free v free aspect just makes fighting games drastically better. So, Capcom vs. SNK 2. I wish I played this earlier in my life, along with basically any SNK fighting game, because they make some quality stuff, let me tell you. I always knew SNK games existed. I played Metal Slug a lot as a kid, and Fatal Fury just existed in my brain for some reason, despite me never having seen or played the game. Like if it was in a police lineup, I would hear the name and go, yep, that's an SNK game right there, officer. As you can see, even with my knowledge of this company existing, SNK fighting games always seem to elude me. I can only vaguely recall some moments where I played them in an arcade. I think I played SNK vs. Capcom like once. Or maybe that was SNK Chaos. Or are those the same game? I can't really remember. But Capcom vs. SNK 2? Wow, just wow. This game is amazing. The different styles or isms you can pick change up gameplay so much it makes each individual character feel different depending on which style you chose. We got the super combo grooves, the custom combo grooves, the groovy grooves, and we got the parry groove, which I'm never choosing because I'm not good enough at parrying. You can't make me use this. Even if it was to save my life, you had a gun to my head and told me to parry, just shoot me. As for the characters, the SNK cast felt so fresh to me that most of my main teams are made up of SNK characters. Always having either Kyo or King since they're just so much fun to mess around with. Kyo especially, he's kinda busted from what I played. This style of free v free combat is also a bit different here too. Instead of being able to switch to your other fighters or call them for assist, you fight as one of them for as long as you can, only switching to other team members once your current fighter has gone down. To add on to the stress of this, your health carries over between rounds, so if you had a close match that left you with a sliver of health, well, you better pray to whatever god you believe in that you can pop off the next few rounds or so. And let me tell you, whenever you're in that situation where it's your last fighter against a full team, whew boy, that's a Herculean trial. Speaking of, the arcade mode is a blast to play through and can get very difficult out of nowhere, which can lead to that exact situation I just talked about. And it's actually the most fun I've ever had playing through an arcade mode. The sound mixing of the game itself gives me vibes of being in an old arcade where the cabinet is just blaring sound all around to get people's attention, along with the announcer just never shutting up.
You can feel the intensity in the air as the hopes, dreams, and hearts of these warriors are about to be put to the ultimate test of skill. What they are after is the title of the world's...
One of my favorite parts of the game too, honestly. Even more so than that, however, is the fact that Capcom artist Kinu Nishimura and SNK artist Shinkuro, otherwise known as art gods, both made art for each individual character and just, oh my god, it's so good. Just look at his stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you say my collection's complete? Okay, wow, sorry, I didn't mean to get that worked up. But there are two things I'm very passionate about in this world, art and music. And CVS2 just gets both right in such a perfect way. The aesthetics of the entire game in general is just so much fun too. The whole news broadcast for this huge tournament breathes so much life into this game. And the soundtrack, oh man, I haven't even talked about the music yet. I mean, have you ever heard this game's soundtrack? Yeah, I could listen to this soundtrack for a long while. Everything about Capcom vs. SNK 2 is beautiful, an absolute masterclass in fighting game execution and presentation, with gameplay that feels like you're actually in the heat of battle to art that just exudes personality. Except maybe for Morgan, her sprite just looks odd next to everyone else. Well, to wrap up this section of my insanity, Capcom vs. SNK 2 is a game you must play if you're new to fighting games or just interested in the genre. It's that good. If it wasn't for this game, I probably wouldn't be as hyped for new fighting game releases as I am, or as invested in improving my skills. The gameplay alone proved to me that there is so much I don't know about how complex fighting games can be. And speaking of, it's time to move on to our last game. So I certainly didn't expect to get as hyped about these games as I thought, but the hype train is yet to reach its destination. This last game I talk about tonight is one that's come out fairly recently, and one that's made its way into my heart rather quickly too. And that game is not even a game. It's the Mets. Love the Mets. Alright, baby, let's go. Get a home run, baby. Love the Mets. Alright, you know I'm kidding. It's Guilty Gear Strive.
Body's bullshit blazing, still my heart is blazing. If the words kill me, I don't need a new one under you. Soon you will know. We already know the smell of the game.
Well, there's a lot to get into here, so let's just dive in. Guilty Gear has everything I love about fighting games packed into it. Except maybe for Morrigan, her sprite just looks odd next to everyone else. It may not have a free format, but it's got rock and roll, it's got music references, it's got a dude that beats the bejesus out of you of a whole coffin, and it's got Millie raging it. What else is there to say? The gameplay? Oh yeah, there's that too. My first experience with Guilty Gear was with Exard Revelator, where I learned that not all fighting games are built the same. The Guilty Gear series, from what I've seen and played at least, has always been known for having deep mechanics and complex gameplay, which even now I have yet to understand fully. Even still, I feel that Guilty Gear Strive excels in having gameplay that's decently easy to learn but extremely hard to master. Or you can just pick Saul. I'm personally a Kai main myself, but a budding Zato main, and I gotta admit, I'm pretty good. As in I get destroyed every online match I play, but I have won a few rounds before, getting obliterated almost instantly in the next round, but that's besides the point. This game has taught me the hard lesson that every fighting game player must learn, that it's going to take a long time until you start racking up wins consistently. Strive has also taught me to discipline myself, as weird as that sounds. It's got me to approach fighting games in a completely new way. I can't just button mash my way to victory as I'd always done. I'm starting to understand that there's a rhythm to these things. Combos have to be timed properly, as well as block strings, which can turn into mix-ups and cross-ups so quickly I have to learn to adapt or watch as my character eats an entire combo that I certainly did not order. And if it sounds like I'm exaggerating all this and making it seem like I'm this martial arts student training under a wise master, it's because that's how this game makes me feel. I'm finally putting an effort into improving my skills, and each step of the way makes me feel like I'm getting stronger in both body and mind. Now all that being said, people still sweep the floor with my ragdolled body, but at least I'm having fun, right? Strive's gameplay is solid for what it is, and there's a lot I haven't figured out yet. Like, did you know that there are 3 different types of Roman cancels? Because I usually forget this whole mechanic even exists sometimes. Moving on, I bet you haven't heard this one before, but the art in this game is pretty neat. The character designs are an absolute upgrade from previous entries in the series. They're so good that picking a main was one of the hardest parts of getting into this game for me. You just want to give everyone a shot. Oh, and have I even mentioned the music? I mean, have you heard this game's soundtrack? Okay, you get it. I like music. Let's move on already. But seriously, take a listen to this game's soundtrack when you can. Every song is a banger. Well, everything about Guilty Gear is a banger, actually. The gameplay, the characters, Milia, the lore that I can't be bothered to read once it reaches Exard, because, like, good lord. But with all this, Guilty Gear as a series has become yet another cornerstone for the foundation of my fighting game obsession, and I'm very glad to have it there. I feel like there's a lot more I can talk about when it comes to fighting games. Things like individual characters, the stories of certain games, what goes into learning to play them, talking about why Karin is the best Street Fighter character, the list is almost endless. But I don't want this episode to drag on too long, so I think I'll just save those topics for the future. This entire thing is mainly to introduce you to my love of the genre, and speaking of, it's time for the sappy part of this episode. I don't think I'll ever get tired of fighting games. They've been with me since childhood and will always be there. I was practically raised by them. They've taught me the lessons of overcoming failure, the thrill of winning, keeping calm under pressure, and they've even given me the strength to just not give up as easily at things. And I'm being serious here, these games have positively impacted my real life, and that's not an easy thing for media to do for me. I may be easily pleased by things, but if something can actually help me improve myself in reality, well, that something is definitely special, and that's why I can say with confidence that fighting games are worth it. So if you ever pick Virgil alongside me in MVC free, just know we're about to have a clash of gods, my friend. So this video is supposed to be a lot different than what it turned out to be, but that's probably for the best. Originally, I was just going to sit here and try to convince people to play fighting games, but there's a lot more videos out there that have already done that, and have done so way better than I ever could have. So instead, I figured I'd just sort of gush and nerd out about my favorite games for a while. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and if you did and made it this far, you have my biggest thanks. It means a lot that you were able to sit through my insane ramblings. As for what else I've been working on, well, there's a Deltarune playthrough if you want to go check that out. Apologies in advance for the audio mixing in that one. I didn't realize how jank it was until after I beat the game and started looking over the videos, which I probably should have done as I recorded them, but it's too late now and you can still enjoy them. It's not that bad. As for other commentary stuff like this, you can check out my Persona 1 retrospective video. It's pretty good if I do say so myself. Regardless of all that though, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. If you did, hit that like button, and if you enjoy my existence, consider subscribing and ringing that bell. It's free, painless, and you won't miss my other stuff. But I think I've talked long enough. I've been your host, the Moonstar, and I'll see you all in the next one.